Hello, Keith Rucker here at VintageMachinery.org. Guys, we're back to working on the metal planer today, and got the bull gear that drives the table ready to install back into the machine. So I've done a little bit of work off camera on this. Figured you guys probably didn't really want to see me wire wheeling and painting. Pretty boring stuff, but we just got the castings cleaned up, repainted, got the bearing caps again cleaned up, painted, ready to go back together, and let's do it. So the bearings that we're going to be using here, these are Babbitt bearings. This is pretty common for that era of machine, which is approximately 1890 on this particular one. Babbitt bearings were used pretty much up and through the 1930s, maybe even into the 1940s. But by the late 19-teens and 1920s, ball bearings were starting to come on to play, and it kind of took a little while for them to really go in and overtake Babbitt bearings. But Babbitt bearings, Babbitt material, there's a cast iron shell here, and then there's this piece in here, which is actually cast in place. Babbitt is an alloy, contains tin, lead, some other different materials, but basically it's a material that's a little bit softer than the steel, and when you put a layer of oil in here, it creates a very nice bearing surface. A lot of people look at Babbitt bearings and they want to get rid of them and replace them with ball bearings. It's really not necessary. Babbitt bearings is actually a very good bearing material. They just require a little bit of care and feeding. Primarily, you got to keep them oiled to keep them working good. And these Babbitt bearings here are in pretty good shape as they are, so that's good news for me, which means I'm not going to have to re-pour these. A lot of times, if the bearing is in bad shape, I'll just get a torch, melt out the material. It melts at a relatively low temperature, 700-800 degrees. Much lower than the cast iron. You melt it out and you re-pour new ones. I've got videos where I've shown that. We're not going to have to do that, thankfully, on this job. So what I did was I came in here and just kind of checked the fit of these up onto the actual part. And yesterday I actually had some bolts in these. It's a nice tight fit. It's not too tight. It's not very loose. It's going to work just fine. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put these bearing assemblies together and just have them hanging on the gear so that when we go over there we can just pick it right up and put it in place. I could go in and put the bottom bearings up under the bottom, bring the shaft up into those, but I think it's going to be easier. We took them off with leaving the bearings put together, so that's kind of my game plan here. So let me get some tools and we'll go ahead and get these put on. We'll take the bearing shell, just kind of hold up under the bottom here, put the cap on top, and I think that's on there backwards. Let's, yeah, that's better. Flip it around, and we got some bolts here to tighten these up on. Sometimes on these Babbitt bearing caps, you'll have some shims in there. None are really necessary on this one. All right, you can see that turns nicely. There's actually hardly any play in there, which is perfect. Again, a lot of times when they make Babbitt bearings, they will put shims in here, so as the bearing wears, you can take the shims out and tighten them up, but these are in good shape like they are. Let's go ahead and turn it around the other side. Same process. Put the bearing shells on here. And tighten the bolts. Go. And again, that one feels excellent. So I'll make sure we put a little oil on these. These are actually going to mount upside down. They'll hang on the bottom of the planer like this, and there's a oil hole right here in the top. And there's actually a tube that comes down through the casting that allows you to drip oil on these bearings. So we'll make sure we'll get some in there before we put these on. So to put the gear back on the planer, I really need to be able to have access without the top on it. And I haven't removed the top since we've got it back from having it ground, but now is the time. We used these chain slings when we were up at Cash Masters with his overhead crane. I really like these, so when I got back home, I actually purchased a set of these to use in the shop, and it really makes moving things like this this top a whole lot easier. So we're going to go ahead and pick this up. I'm just going to set it over on my welding table out of the way while we're working on this. That's probably high enough. So see if we can get the crane moving in that direction now. That's probably good. I want to put some 2x4s up underneath the bottom of this for the ways to sit on. I want those to be about a third of the way in on each side. So I got those where they need to be. Coming down. There we go. Okay, I'm going to slide this up under the machine now because we're going to have to lift it up. You know what? I'm going to have to pick the whole planer up, either that or lay it over on its edge and pick it back up. Let's see, I can probably just lay the gear down, slide it under, and pick it back up on the inside. It's got to come up in between here, so let me try that. I think this is going to work. Okay. Yep. All right, we're going to reconnect our gear inside here. There we go. Okay, we are suspended. And I need to go forward just a little bit. I can see I got some holes that are completely through the casting in here that I can kind of look down through and see how we're lining up, and we're roughly lined up about right there. So I'm gonna have to crawl up underneath the bottom now and get my screws started. All right, there's 4 bolt holes holding this all together. Let me get down here where I can see my alignment. Hey, Josie, you checking things out down here? I'm just wanting to get all these started before I tighten them up too much. Hey, sweetheart. Hey. Are you down here checking things out? I think we got these ready to go. Let me zip them up. All right, that one's done. We'll get the other ones bolted up on the other side. I think we'll have this mounted. Let's take our weight off the strap. Pull that out. This gantry out of the way. All right, I think we got our bull gear installed. So in case you haven't figured it out, what this does is this gear drives the table back and forth on this. So that whole table sits down on top and rides in these ways. There's a rack on the bottom of that table that engages with this big bull gear, and that's what gives us its power forward and power back to basically just actuate that table back and forth. There's a lot more gearing. There's I think there's 3 more shafts up underneath here with gears and pulleys and whatever to drive this. And that's going to be our next step, is to continue working on those and get our whole drive mechanism back up underneath here. So I'll mention a little bit about the lubrication system here. If you look, there's a little pipe that goes down, comes in from the outside of the casting, drips down in that hole that I showed you before. So if you look over on the side, there's actually a little oil hole here where I can just take a little squirt can, squirt some oil in there. Let me get the other side. Spin that a few times. Wow, I can already tell the difference. It was taking some force to turn a while ago, and with a little bit of oil in there, I mean, it's just free spinning now, so that's good. So one thing I'm going to comment on this lubrication system, this is the original with these little oil drip cups in here or whatever you can squirt oil into. And they work fine, but I think we're going to be making a modification to the entire lubrication system on this machine for all the pulleys, the gears, the shafts, as well as the ways, and modify it so that we have an automatic lubrication system on here. So when the machine's running, it's just constantly lubricating all these critical points. I think the ways on this machine would have lasted a lot longer had we had a better lubrication system. Remember, we're dealing with 1890s technology, because that's when this machine was made. And while I don't want to modify it, change it too much, I think we can do some things that will make it a little bit more modern, a little bit more modern technology, and make the machine work and last better. That's the end goal. So we'll be doing more about that later on, but I'm just going to make a comment there. But with that, we got our bull gear is installed. Our bull gear is running very nicely, and we're ready to move on to the next step on this project. So there you go, guys. I think that's going to be a wrap on this one. Just a quick video showing us installing the bull gear. Most of the work was honestly done off camera. That's the cleanup work, the painting work, which is just got to be done on all this. And it's not very exciting, but we're going to get it done. One more piece of the elephant has been eaten. You know the old saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. We're taking one bite at a time. We got one more thing done. And again, we'll be moving on next with the next shaft that comes in here. That one's going to be a little bit more detailed, a little bit more involved, and we'll be having a video coming up on that one soon. So guys, as always, thanks for watching. Please leave comments if you like. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thumbs up are always appreciated. And guys, we'll catch you on the next video. Thanks for watching.